Hello AP Biology students, let's go over the second section in Unit 8. In this section, we're going to talk about how energy flows through ecosystems. We're first going to cover the concept of a food chain and a food web. A food chain is a linear sequence of events or steps in which organisms are going to transfer energy by eating or consuming each other. So an example of a food chain would be like going from the bottom here with like vegetation, going to the crayfish here, going to the frog, and then going to the alligator. This food chain, again, is showing that energy transfer between the bottom of this food chain and the top of this food chain. The arrows in this food chain are going to show that transfer of energy, again, going from the bottom all the way up. Now, a food web is multiple food chains put together. And typically, these food chains and food webs start with the producers down here at the bottom. As you can see, the arrows are all going away from the producers to the consumers. On the right-hand side, you can see this arrow showing that all of these organisms are going to be broken down by the decomposers. Now, within these different food chains and food webs, we have different ways to identify how species are eating one another. Down here in this energy pyramid, you can see we have our producers. The primary consumers are going to eat the producers. The secondary consumers are going to eat the primary consumers. The tertiary consumers are going to eat the secondary consumers. And lastly, the quaternary consumers are going to eat the tertiary consumers. So basically what we're looking at is, again, more of our herbivores being here in the primary consumers, omnivores and carnivores being here in the secondary and tertiary consumers, and then lastly, usually the quaternary consumers are carnivores. It's important to remember that all of these are going to be, again, broken down by decomposers in the end. Within these energy pyramids, we have something called the 10% rule, and this states that only about 10% of the energy is going to make it to the next trophic level. The other 90% of the energy that is consumed is going to be lost as heat. So again, you can see if we have 100% of the energy obtained by the producers, only about 10% of that energy is going to make it to the first level of consumers, only about 1% of the 100% is going to make it to the second level, and only about 0.1% is going to make it to that third level. This is again because at each level, you're only going to get 10% of the last level's energy to transfer. Something else I like to cover in this unit is called biomass. And biomass is just the total dry mass of all the organisms in a given environment. Obviously, this biomass is going to decrease as we move up the food chain. If you look here, you can see that the most of the biomass in an ecosystem is going to be like the producers. But as we move up in this food chain, we're going to see a smaller and smaller amount of biomass at each trophic level. This is again because of that 10% rule. Only 10% of the energy is making it to the next trophic level, so there's just not enough energy to support a larger biomass at those top trophic levels. Lastly, we're going to talk about the difference between endotherms and ectotherms. Endotherms use thermal energy produced by their metabolism to maintain their internal temperatures. We are, as humans, more endothermic because, again, we're using the metabolic processes within our bodies to keep our temperatures at a certain level. Organisms that are ectotherms are going to regulate their internal environments not by their metabolism, but by the external environment or the sun. These are typically like reptiles or like snakes that have to use, again, their environment for their warmth. I like to remind students that this scale is not a binary scale. It's not like you're either endothermic or ectothermic. Dinosaurs, in fact, are probably mesothermic, which means they're in the middle. They use their environment a little bit, but they also use metabolism as well. I have to end on this meme. I guess you could call it a food web. Get it? Because it's a spider's web with flies. Okay, good meme, bad joke.